Did you know that a 2015 study found a correlation between group sex participation and higher self-reported life satisfaction, with participants citing increased intimacy and unique social connections? The term orgy, or doing it with a bunch of people at the same time, originates from ancient Greece, where the term orgia marked sacred rituals dedicated to Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, fertility, and ecstasy. The action itself, of course, is much older than ancient Greece. And today, we're going to cover the whole history of orgies in just 30 short minutes, so try to hang in there, as it's scientifically proven that you'll never get to be a part of an orgy unless you watch this video till the end. To those who are not afraid of life and can't wait to hear all the absurd facts I've decided to gather for you today, I say, let's dive in. Early human tribes from the Paleolithic era had social structures centered on survival and reproduction. Evidence from cave paintings and artifacts indicates sexual activity was often public, likely due to the lack of private spaces. Communal sexual activities were likely common, driven by the need to strengthen social bonds and ensure genetic diversity within small populations. As communal living and shared responsibilities were key aspects of early human tribes, it made communal activities, including sexual ones, integral to their societal structure. It is crucial to avoid sensationalizing these behaviors with modern notions of orgy. Instead, view them in the context of communal and survival-oriented early human societies. But yes, I agree. I bet they didn't hate the bi-weekly orgy Fridays either. The primary focus for these tribes was still group continuation and prosperity, with social and sexual behaviors serving essential functions. Fast forward in time, ancient Mesopotamia thrived between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers from around 3500 BCE to 500 BC. This complex society had diverse cultural practices, much of which is known from cuneiform tablets. Evidence suggests certain public sexual rituals existed. A notable example is the sacred marriage ritual, or hieros gamos, a ceremonial public act between the king, a high priestess, and temple virgins, symbolizing the union of a god and goddess to ensure fertility and prosperity. This ritual, involving sexual acts, was deeply symbolic and conducted in a controlled, religious context. References to generalized orgiastic activities are rare and often speculative, mostly stemming from later interpretations or mythic tales rather than direct evidence. Thus, while some ritualistic sexual activity existed, broad claims of societal orgies lack substantial evidence. On the other hand, ancient Egypt, renowned for its colossal pyramids and enigmatic sphinxes, held religious festivals which often featured elaborate celebrations, but the term orgy likely misrepresents these deeply spiritual and symbolic celebrations focused on regeneration and fertility rather than hedonistic pleasure. Fertility rites were common in many ancient agricultural societies. However, concrete evidence of sexual orgies as understood today is lacking. Artistic depictions show scenes of feasting and dancing, but do not definitively prove sexual activities. Thus, we must dive deeper into the black hole that is history. And what better place to delve next than ancient Greece, renowned for its philosophy, art, and politics, who of course also engaged in practices that might seem unusual today. One such practice under scrutiny is indeed orgy, derived from the Greek word orgia. Such activities were semi-public and could involve multiple participants, creating an impression of loosened social norms. Yet the primary focus was spiritual transcendence, not solely hedonistic pleasure. Festivals like the Dionysia featured excessive drinking, dancing, and revelry, often leading to spontaneous sexual encounters. These events were crucial in worshiping Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and religious ecstasy. Participants believed such activities connected them with the divine and ensured land and people fertility. Evidence from vase paintings, literature, and archaeological finds shows that commoners also engaged in these activities, thus proving orgies were part of the broader social and religious fabric of ancient Greece. But it's crucial to distinguish between religious rites and the perception of unrestrained sexual activities in ancient Greece. While orgiastic rites existed, everyday sexual norms were mainly regulated by societal rules and events. For example, symposiums. Symposiums were social gatherings for men to engage in philosophical discussions, entertainment, and drinking. Women of the upper class had limited public roles, and their participation in such gatherings was restricted. Heterae, or courtesans, enjoyed more freedom and could join intellectual and social functions with men. Despite a few upsets here and there, laws and societal norms maintained order and propriety in ancient Greece. Adultery was severely punished, and marriage was an important social contract. Men were expected to uphold virtues, and social reputation was highly valued. Pederasty, a socially acknowledged relationship between adult men and younger boys, was governed by strict codes of conduct and was not purely sexual, but educational and mentorship-based. Ancient Greek society was multifaceted, deeply rooted in traditions and regulations extending beyond mere indulgence. Rituals and specific practices might give an impression of libertinism, but they were often symbolic and steeped in religious or cultural significance. Medical implications to orgies or collective sexual activity, or simply put, group sex, are significant. Unprotected group sex heightens the risk of sexually transmitted infections. Ancient Romans used sheep bladders as primitive condoms to mitigate these risks. Today, medical science stresses the importance of condoms. Psychologists study the social and mental impacts of orgies, noting potential benefits like enhanced social bonds and loss of suicidal thoughts. As said, a 2015 study found a correlation between group sex participation and higher self-reported life satisfaction, with participants citing increased intimacy and unique social connections. However, psychological harm remains a risk, with some experiencing regret or guilt post-event. Sexual health experts emphasize that communication and consent are crucial in group sexual activities. Clear boundaries and mutual agreement mitigate psychological risks. Substance use is another critical factor. Alcohol and recreational drugs, often present in these settings, can impair judgment and increase risky behaviors. Harm reduction strategies encourage participants to stay sober or limit substance use. Beyond physical health, psychological well-being is vital. Mental health professionals recommend post-event counseling to manage complex emotions. Open dialogue within the community can help address these issues. Additionally, ongoing research aims to understand the biological and neurological responses to group sexual activity. Preliminary findings suggest that neurochemical release during such events can enhance bonding and stress relief. And just like humans are weird in their doings, the animals are as well. Dolphins are maybe the most famous orgy fans from the ocean depths, as they engage in group sex to establish and reinforce social hierarchies and bonds. Certain bird species, like the ruff, use lek mating systems where multiple males display for females, leading to group mating scenarios. Insects also show complex mating behaviors. The honeybee queen undertakes mating flights, mating with multiple males in quick succession. These behaviors are crucial for reproduction, social structure, and species survival. The red jungle fowl, a wild ancestor of domestic chickens, engages in frequent, frenzied mating involving multiple individuals in a short time. Marine creatures, like certain coral species, synchronize mass spawning events where vast numbers release their gametes simultaneously. Among mammals, the common chimpanzee participates in multi-male, multi-female mating systems within their social groups. In amphibians, some frog species have explosive breeding events where large groups gather in small areas to mate rapidly, often in large clusters. But now back to the human realm, where ancient Romans must save other civilizations from shame and show how orgies are really done. And indeed, ancient Roman orgies have long fascinated historians and the public. These hedonistic gatherings are often portrayed as wild parties with excessive drinking, feasting, and various sexual activities. Initially, Roman society was deeply conservative with strict moral values. However, the introduction of Greek culture during the 2nd century BC brought significant changes. Greek symposia, social drinking parties with intellectual conversation, gradually evolved into more hedonistic gatherings as they merged with Roman traditions. Another significant influence was the Bacchanalia, a festival honoring Bacchus, the Roman god of wine and ecstasy. Initially modest festivities, these eventually transformed into grand and often debauched celebrations. The Bacchanalia encountered significant backlash from Roman authorities. The Roman Senate, fearing a loss of social order, took measures to curb these excesses. In 886 BC, the Senate issued the Senatus Consultum de Bacchanalibus, a decree that restricted Bacchanalian practices. The decree prohibited Bacchic cults from holding rituals without state approval and imposed strict regulations on gatherings. Despite these restrictions, the allure of such experiences ensured that the Bacchanalia continued in secret. Over the centuries, these gatherings evolved into more organized events, often sponsored by wealthy individuals. Orgies became symbols of status and power, with the elite hosting them in lavish villas. Even Roman emperors partook, with accounts of their decadent lifestyles contributing to the legend of Roman orgies. These events often included elaborate feasts, exotic entertainment, and indulgent activities that blurred social class lines, offering a temporary escape from societal norms. The Saturnalia, a festival for the god Saturn in December, also played a pivotal role. It subverted social orders, granting slaves temporary freedom and revered roles. Characterized by feasting, drinking, and festivities, Saturnalia likely contributed to orgy culture. Despite moral and legal constraints by the Roman state, the allure of these gatherings ensured their persistence. The perception of orgies in ancient Rome is intertwined with Roman attitudes towards pleasure, power, and excess. These events mirrored a society that indulged in significant hedonism. Emperors like Tiberius and Nero became infamous for their lavish feasts and sexual debauchery, though not all Romans participated in or approved of such excesses. Moralists and philosophers like Seneca and Cicero often criticized the erosion of public morality due to these indulgences. Stories of Roman orgies have endured, offering insight into the complexities of Roman society and its evolution. The allure of the Roman orgy lies not only in its excess, but also in how it encapsulated the tensions between tradition and freedom, order and chaos that defined ancient Rome. And now in ancient China, the origins of orgies trace back to the Shang dynasty, circa 1600 to 1046 BC. Fertility rites and agricultural festivals involved communal feasting, dancing, and sometimes sexual activities to ensure bountiful harvests. Historical records, like oracle bone inscriptions, indicate these practices were embedded in the religious and social fabric. The Shang rulers' mandate included maintaining harmony between the spiritual and earthly realms, with fertility rites, occasionally orgiastic, seen as essential for this balance. The subsequent Zhou dynasty, from 1046 to 256 BC, saw similar practices, though the focus shifted to more elaborate court ceremonies and festivities. These events, typically orchestrated by the elite, reflected the hierarchical structure of Zhou society. During the Han dynasty, from 206 BC to 220 AD, societal views and practices around rituals evolved significantly. Confucian ideology, emphasizing moral integrity and social order, dominated the era. However, Taoist practices, which celebrated natural human desires, also persisted. Some rites retained orgiastic elements, particularly during religious and communal festivities like the Lantern Festival and Ghost Festival, where activities sometimes turned licentious. Han historians documented these practices with a mix of fascination and moral concern, reflecting cultural tensions. Taoist beliefs promoted sexual activities as a means to achieve spiritual enlightenment and longevity, perpetuating such practices in private settings among the elite. Mystical sects also engaged in these practices, viewing them as a path to immortality. In later dynasties, like the Tang and Song, orgiastic rituals became more subdued due to stricter Confucian norms and increasing foreign interactions. The Tang dynasty saw remnants of these practices mainly in private, elite circles. Erotic art and literature from the period indicate ongoing, albeit discreet, indulgence. The Song dynasty continued this trend, prioritizing public morality and social order. Legal codes began to enforce stricter stances against public indecency and licentious behavior. Despite this, private gatherings and secret societies maintained their traditions away from public scrutiny. And what better place to continue than the birthplace of Kama Sutra, the incredible India? The origins of orgies in India trace back to its ancient texts and social structures. The Kama Sutra, compiled between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, reflects a society that accepted sexual enjoyment as part of human life. Tantric practices emerging around the 5th century AD incorporated sexual rites for spiritual enlightenment. Prominent in both Hindu and Buddhist traditions, these practices viewed sexual energy as a powerful force for transformation. Tantric texts describe elaborate rituals where participants engaged in sexual activities as a pathway to transcendence and oneness with the divine. The British colonial period in India marked a significant shift in the perception and practice of sexuality, including orgies. Victorian moral values imposed by the British condemned these practices, leading to their decline and stigmatization. The British deemed such expressions of sexuality immoral and indecent, suppressing them through legal and social reforms. The Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 categorized certain communities as criminal based on their traditional practices, often involving sexual rituals. This stigmatization profoundly impacted these communities, erasing much of their cultural context. Post-independence, India saw further entrenchment of conservative attitudes towards sexuality, fueled by colonial hangovers and traditionalist revivalism. Despite this, remnants of ancient practices survive in some rural areas and among sects resisting mainstream norms. These communities continue rituals involving communal sexual activities, albeit secretly due to prevailing stigma. And while the term orgy originates from ancient Greek rituals and ceremonies, its practices extend beyond Greco-Roman history. In Africa, traditional communal celebrations often involved sensual and fertility-themed rites. For instance, Ancient Egypt's Opet festival celebrated fertility with ritualistic activities. These celebrations were crucial for ensuring the Nile's annual flood, vital for agriculture. Similarly, the Yoruba in Nigeria celebrate the Osun Osogbo festival, dedicated to Osun, the goddess of fertility and love. Participants honor Osun through dance, music, and symbolic acts that strengthen community bonds and continuity. Cultural practices involving sensuality and community engagement were multifaceted and had profound implications for the societies that practiced them, often linked to nature cycles, fertility, and religious devotion. In West Africa, certain initiation ceremonies for youth transitioning into adulthood involved practices that could be interpreted through Western definitions of orgies. Among the Senufo people of Côte d'Ivoire and Mali, the Poro society conducts initiation rites that include dances, cultural teachings, and rituals believed to enhance fertility and social cohesion. During these rites, the community shares knowledge, history, and essential life skills for adulthood. Similarly, among the Kaguru in Tanzania, initiation ceremonies known as unyago for girls incorporate teachings on sexuality, fertility, and community roles. While these ceremonies may include acts that Western perspectives might label as orgiastic, they are deeply rooted in the traditions and cultural values of the societies that practice them, focusing on education, connection, and continuity rather than mere indulgence. These rituals serve as a passage to maturity, imparting vital life lessons and reinforcing communal ties. In southern Africa, the Zulu people celebrate the Umkosi Wakwashwama, or First Fruits Festival, where the king partakes in the new harvest and leads the community in dance and song. Historically, this event included rituals honoring ancestors and renewing communal bonds. Contemporary versions may have toned down explicit elements, but the aim remains to ensure fertility, prosperity, and social unity. Each practice highlights the complex relationship between sexuality, fertility, and community in African cultures. And you just know we can't pass Japan when we discuss such history. So here's the origins of orgies in Japan. Yes, orgies, as communal gatherings for sexual activities, have historical roots in many cultures, including Japan, where these practices intertwine with many social traditions. During the Heian period, 794–1185, the nobility engaged in elaborate court entertainments, including sexual plays and gatherings. The Tale of Genji, a classic work from this era, illustrates the hedonistic lifestyle of the aristocracy, indicating social acceptance of communal sexual activities. In the Edo period, from 1603 to 1868, yukaku, or pleasure quarters, became prominent in cities like Edo, modern-day Tokyo. These government-sanctioned quarters were spaces where sexual entertainment flourished, with licensed brothels and tea houses hosting various sexual activities, including group engagements. This period solidified organized sexual entertainment within urban Japanese culture. Post-World War II, Japan's sexual culture evolved further under American occupation and Western influence, leading to the liberalization of sexual behaviors. Clubs and bathhouses known for group sexual activities became more common, reflecting a blend of traditional practices with modern influences. The evolution of Japan's sexual culture, particularly communal activities like orgies, persisted into contemporary times. The late 20th century saw further diversification and liberalization of sexual norms. Pink salons, erotic entertainment venues, emerged, providing a framework for group interactions. These establishments offered various services, pushing the boundaries of public sexual conduct. Themed clubs and night spots, catering to specific sexual interests and fetishes, became popular, showcasing the growing acceptance of diverse sexual experiences. This period also saw an increase in media representation of such activities, with explicit content becoming more accessible through magazines, films, and later, the internet. Another significant factor was Japan's economic boom in the 1980s, which afforded people greater disposable income and leisure time. With more resources, individuals and couples could explore and participate in a range of sexual experiences, including group activities. In recent decades, Japan's sexual landscape has evolved, shaped by internal dynamics and global trends. Digital technology has revolutionized the organization and accessibility of sexual activities, including orgies. Online platforms and social media facilitate connections among like-minded individuals, easing the organization and participation in group activities. Virtual spaces, such as forums and chat rooms, enable discrete planning and communication. Globalization has introduced new ideas and practices, further diversifying Japan's sexual culture. The adult entertainment industry remains a significant economic aspect, with rising production and consumption of explicit content, normalizing various sexual behaviors, including group activities. Cultural shifts towards greater sexual openness are notable among younger generations who challenge traditional norms and embrace diverse experiences. Public discussions on sexuality have become more prevalent, fostering a more open and accepting environment. The interplay between historical practices and modern influences has created a unique and complex sexual culture in Japan. The persistence of communal sexual activities, from ancient fertility rites to contemporary online organized orgies, underscores the fluidity and adaptability of social norms. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the deep documentary about orgies throughout ages, and if you did enjoy it, as you were supposed to, be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons as well, so you won't miss our future wacky documentaries and thumbnails. Your next entertainment should have already appeared on the screen by now, so you can easily click on them. Your one and only friend, History But Fast.